I'm Simon. I'm the strategic lead for talent here at My Kind of Future, and I'm delighted to be looking forward to talking to you today. And I'm here with Nick. And Nick, do you want to quickly say hi so people know who you are?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully I can be heard. I can't see myself at the moment, which is probably preferable. So I'm within the Merlin Entertainments Group at the moment. I've just finished a rollout of the Hub program in Orlando and looking at our structure and processes within the UK. I've got a background primarily in talent acquisition and what used to be called recruitment across a range of leisure, retail and entertainment businesses.
Fantastic, thanks, Nick. And you'll all find out lots more about Nick as we go through this this session. And this session we're very deliberately designed to be kind of a conversation between Nick and myself. And just so you know, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, please do just pop them into the chat function. And then Hannah, who you heard at the beginning, will be keeping an eye on those questions, and we'll make sure that we cover as many of them as we can in the session. If we can't get to them all, we'll make sure that we come back to you afterwards. So just as a bit of context, really, in terms of you know, the world of talent and what we can expect and what's going on. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about some of the stuff that we're seeing. We're going to chat about what we see as some of the key challenges that you're likely to face in the next 6 months. And Nick and I are going to chat a bit about that. We're then going to talk about really some different ways you could think about your strategy when it comes to talent, and how we can keep D&I at the top of the agenda. And then we'll wrap up with some kind of summary of some key takeaways that he and I have both kind of drawn from the conversation that we have today. And then if there's any more questions still left over, we'll make sure those get covered off. But we'll get Hannah, as I say, to periodically interject with any questions that seem appropriate. So, firstly, in terms of you know, what are we seeing in the new virtual in the new virtual world? I think, you know, all of you know, hugely digital in terms of everything that we are doing. There's some really interesting data from the ISE, so the Institute for Student Employers. For those of you who don't know, represent about the biggest 400, 500 early talent recruiters in the UK. They did done a couple of really good surveys during COVID. You know, 73% of induction and L&D has gone online as a result of what's happening. A third of early talent recruiters have delayed the start date of their early talent, either by a month or two, or some pushing out as far as September. And what's been really interesting is the debate has now come back round again, and I've been in this space that long. I can remember the last time it came around, which was, do we have more than one intake a year? You know, if you've got companies deferring until January, what would have been September, do they really want to take another full intake in September, or might we move to a year round? So more numerous intakes. So certainly some really interesting things that we are that we're starting to see. And of course, virtual assessment days are becoming the norm, dare I say. You know, we've got one running today for one of our clients. So yeah, so that's some of the stuff that we're seeing, just a bit of context. So Hannah, if we can move on. So and what are some of the key challenges in the next 12 months when it comes to hiring early talent? And now Nick and I were chatting about this earlier, and I know you've got some reflections on this, Nick, but you know, we definitely know what some of the challenges are, but definitely there are some challenges that are coming at us that we won't see coming yet. And Nick, I know you've got some thoughts on what some of those are likely to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Simon. I think one of the biggest challenges, which isn't just restricted to talent and recruitment and talent acquisition, is uncertainty. I mean, that's across the world at the moment with everything that we're seeing and we're doing. And I think that uncertainty from a talent point of view is really key. From two perspectives. One is the workforce planning angle. So as a business such as Merlin, when we're reopening attractions across the world, and responding to the current crisis and the current situation, it's very difficult to workforce plan because you're not entirely certain what your customer numbers are going to be like and what their sentiment will be like and how they're going to respond to the prospect of being in environments where there's lots of other people. So that's a key unique challenge that we're facing at the moment. I mean, at Merlin, we face it every year in terms of our new seasons and when we reopen our parks and attractions, and how do you plan for the right numbers of people to predict who's going to be coming in the door. And I think the other challenge is that the balance of power has significantly changed from what was pre-COVID times, in that a lot of individuals have been displaced from their sectors, from their opportunities, from roles that they've been immersed in for many, many years, and for some of them for their entire careers. So I think we're finding that it is now an employer-driven market as opposed to a candidate-driven market. There's a lot of people will be hitting the job boards and hitting the recruitment careers fairs and all the other channels that we use. So the challenge will be, how do you identify that core talent for you that's going to be successful in your business? So that volume is going to be a really interesting challenge to be able to filter and still give a very positive candidate experience, which is going to be really key still. So we've got to assume that it's going to be difficult to attract as ever. So we've got to carry on and promote ourselves through our brands really effectively, but we've then got to give a really positive experience.
Yeah, and Nick, on that point, in terms of how we do that, sorry, Hannah, if we can just roll back, sorry. So in terms of what some of those challenges are, so, companies are going to be going to market and obviously generating applications, and really, not deliberately, but really significant numbers are going to be coming, are definitely going to be coming at us. And as you said, that candidate experience is going to become an even bigger challenge. I know one of the other things we talked about, Nick, was D&I. And I know we're going to talk about it a bit later on, but also some of the implications that, and this could be an unseen challenge, as you say, about the D&I piece, Nick.
Yeah, very much so. So quite rightly, many organizations have been looking at their diversity agenda, looking at how they broaden the range of individuals that they bring into their business to be more reflective of their customer base and to be more inclusive in the way they recruit and how they build their teams. My worry, it's not proven, but my worry around where does that D&I agenda end up sitting when there is a challenge around recruitment in terms of the numbers. So the easier people to recruit are those that have come out of a job of what you may call low-hanging fruit. Whereas there was a lot of activity and a lot of real positive progress around how do we identify individuals who are maybe from a SEND background, or maybe those who are from an ex-offender background, or those who are from different and diverse ethnicity groups and communities. All the right things to be doing, but how does that stay top of your agenda when you've got so many other challenges and your candidate marketplace is swamped with potentially great talent? Yeah,
thanks, Nick. So some chunky challenges facing us in the next 12 months that we need to address. So Hannah, if we can just skip on to what some of the ways that we might respond to that, and some of the things that can be done. So I know, Nick, one of the things that you're really passionate about is reimagining talent as a way to look at this differently. So can you just expand a little bit about what you mean by reimagining talent?
Yeah, so my experience has been within, as I said in the intro, a range of hospitality, retail, entertainment organizations, where ultimately what we're looking for is attitude, behavior, and personality. Those individuals who will resonate with our customers, who will wow those customers and give them a great experience. And those talents are not necessarily visible, particularly within a CV, for example. And there is tendency that the job descriptions and the roles and responsibilities we see advertised focus very much on what you're going to do, as in your responsibilities, a list of tasks that you will apply yourself to and will be required in the job. And what I've been working on for a number of years now, and as an offshoot with an employability platform called Naturally Talented Me, is the focus around an individual's natural talents, the softer skills that are less trainable than those technical skills that you would learn on the job. and trying to focus in on some of those natural talents that make people stand out. So whether that's things like devotion or calmness or attention to detail, teamwork, all of those essential ingredients and attributes that enable people to be successful in the job, great with your customers, and are able to progress and be happy and hence stay longer if you get that match right. So that reimagination for me is rethinking how we present our jobs in different language, and focusing on those soft skills that are really key.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, isn't it? Is that, the risk is if we just go to market as we normally do, we're just going to get vast numbers. And this was a trend pre-COVID, and we're going to see it even more now, is most organizations, regardless of the volume of hires that they have, don't want more applications, they want less. So it's really looking at how can we draw out those things that we're really looking for in individuals. And I know, for example, a number of companies have started using essentially video JDs, or rather than a JD, actually getting the hiring manager to talk about, those softer skills and the things that they are looking for in individuals, as a trend. Have you seen anything like that, Nick?
I think that trend around the identification of those softer skills has been an evolution more recently. I'm having lots more conversations with people who are more attuned with the need for that different thinking, for sure. And this isn't, there appears to be, I can go quite so far, maybe it's calling it a groundswell, but there's certainly a movement towards and a realization that we do need to think very differently about how we identify the essential skills, and moving away from the habit of listing qualifications or accreditations that aren't relevant. And because it's easy, if you do that, to reduce your numbers. If you put in a qualification that restricts your applications, then you end up with a smaller pool of people. So hence that's easier to filter. But if you're not using the right filtering criteria, then you don't end up with the right pool of people in the end anyway. And it's a false approach, really.
And also that, as you say, we've seen over the last number of years, a growth in strengths-based recruitment over competency-based recruitment. But just what you were talking about there in terms of those accreditations and qualifications, a move away from that, and we've seen a growing number of organisations move away from that, helps drive the diversity agenda. So, a really simplistic example that we've certainly seen in the graduate market, 5 years ago, over 75% of recruiters were using 2-1 as a criteria to be allowed to apply. It's now 57%. It's a really significant shift. And that's reflective of, one, using that as a benchmark cuts out a certain quantity of underrepresented talent that we want to be hiring. And two, the other reality that 75% of graduates get a 2-1 or a first. So actually it doesn't shrink the two. So it actually compounds your problems. It doesn't help with the challenges that you have, that you've got that you're facing.
And is it relevant is the big question for me. I think you should always be questioning yourself as to, well, I'm putting this in as a requirement. Is it going to add to the quality and the suitability of that individual if they come armed with that particular qualification? And in some cases, absolutely, it does. And there are many professions where a qualification is absolutely essential. But I think we should always take a second look at what we're putting into our job requirements and be absolutely authentic and genuine with ourselves, saying, is that really what I need? Will that boil down to that perfect pool of candidates who are then going to be successful and stay with me?
Yeah, and the other piece I know that we've chatted about before is pairing underrepresented talent with valuable skills. Nick, I know that's something else that you're really passionate about. So do you want to just expand on that a bit?
Yeah, and I don't think it's contentious, but hey, let's talk about it anyway. So there's been a lot of talk recently and around anonymizing CVs. Around removing any labels and indications of background, and protected characteristics, so whether that's gender, age, ethnicity, etc. And my thinking is that simply moves the challenge further down the journey, in that if there's discrimination that's going to happen from whatever the protected characteristic, then it will happen at a later stage in the process of recruitment, whether it's at interview or whether it's in a video assessment, whatever it might be. So my view is that we should be much prouder around our backgrounds and our heritage and our gender and our age, and say, this is who I am, but we focus on our talents and we promote ourselves regardless of your background, your ethnicity, your age, your gender, etc. And if we become more, because we're then addressing, or we have an opportunity to address the problem, because by hiding behind anonymity, we're not dealing with the nub of the problem, which is if there is bias and if there's discrimination going on, we need to deal with that. Because ultimately, what we're looking for is the right person to do the job with the right background, the right skills and the right talents. So if you can have greater awareness within your organization of your mix of gender and ethnicity and age, for example, then you can deal with and you can focus your recruitment based on not only addressing a shortfall in particular talents such as creativity or team playing or attention to detail or focus, resilience, whatever it may be, but you can also focus on addressing some of the other gaps around some of the demographics within your business. So your promotions and your targeted advertising uses the right imagery, the right tone of voice in the right communities. So you're attracting people to address more than just your talent gap.
So kind of 2 for 1 or buy one, get one free, you're always talking about that. If you think about the skills, but also those underrepresented talent pools.
Absolutely.
And look at them together, you can deal with 2 issues in one go.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get people who join your business who are more successful and hence will stay longer from those underrepresented groups, which is really key and important.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Thanks. So Anna, if we can skip on, I think we've been talking a bit about D&I already, which I think is the next slide. So can we just whiz through to the next slide, Hannah?
Perfect, thank you. We've had a couple of questions come in. Can I put them forward to you now as we stay on the subject before we move on? 2 seconds, sorry. So going back to our points around candidate experience, Jessica has asked you both that with these significant numbers, how do you plan to manage candidate feedback, which is a big sticking point? It's absolutely key to a positive candidate experience, but is not a given. Have you ever been in a situation where GDPR and subject access requests have been used to get this feedback?
So there's a couple of things in there. So if I just look at that candidate experience piece and feedback, yeah, we absolutely know, that candidate feedback is really important for candidates because it helps them learn. But we know how much of a challenge it is for organizations to deliver particularly individualized candidate experience. So, it's definitely a challenge. And my sense is employers recognize its value and its importance. It's trying to find a way to do that basically doesn't mean that the resourcing team fall over from a workload point of view to deliver it. So one of the trends a couple of trends that we're seeing is one, if candidates are being rejected at certain stages of the process, there is generalized feedback that is given to those individuals about, so if it was they didn't get through the video interview stage or online test or an SGAT, whatever, or an assessment center, they will have, I guess, generalized feedback on what is it the organizations, typical reasons why people fail and typical reasons why people get through. So, using that as an approach is definitely something that's been done. Another piece that's been done is the use of peer-to-peer support. So we know if we take in the university space, for example, it might be through campus ambassadors. They're kind of preemptively giving, sharing insights into what it takes to get through the various stages. We know through our technology platform here at My Kind of Future, we have pre-created content ahead of each stage of the process to prepare the candidates and to give them the best chance of getting through. So actually, rather than failing high numbers, what can you do to reduce the numbers that are failing through the process? So those are some of the things that we've been seeing people doing to address that really important issue of candidate experience, which, one of the other things that we've seen happening with candidates going through recruitment processes, either for apprentice roles, grad roles, intern roles, is candidates are definitely asking questions about or researching what organizations have done to support their people during COVID. So definitely employers should prepare for that question coming at them, or ideally get on the front foot about what you have been doing to support your people through that really difficult time. I don't have anything else you want to add, Nick.
I think just a reinforcement of some of what you've said, to be honest. The reality is that and it's always been the case with the evolution of online and social, and the ease in which you can apply for a job now, simply a click of a button, attach your LinkedIn profile, and you've applied. It doesn't always require a great deal of thought to get an application into the pipeline. So the reality is that there are going to be many more, particularly in this climate, because there's lots more job seekers, many more applications, and we've got to accept that fact. And I think there's a realization that best will in the world, you cannot have a one-to-one engagement with every candidate. So it's about, I think, being honest and transparent. It's not about dodging your responsibility and saying, if you don't hear from us, then you haven't been successful, because that's a particularly poor experience. But I think it's about, I love the idea of having some predefined content that's the right tone of voice, that's brand aligned, that has a positive message in it, that may have some signposting about other places where individuals could look or go to, or where there is support and guidance around improving the way they write a CV, the way they complete a profile, the way they interview, whatever it might be at the stage of the journey. But I think it's about being transparent and honest and realistic. We can't beat ourselves up about not speaking to every single candidate. Unfortunately, it just isn't possible. But you've got to have a robust process that makes contact with that individual and keeps them informed regularly and fairly within the process.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nick. Hannah, are we okay to move on?
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both.
Great. So as I think we've done the D&I slide. So can you, yeah, so we talked a bit about that. So final point I wanted to talk about was recruiting in a VUCA world. And lots of you may be aware of that term VUCA, and some less so. So VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And COVID has I think we always lived in that world, and COVID has just made it even more volatile, even more uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So it's a really challenging place to be. And I think how we attract and recruit talent now is highly likely to be different to how we do it in 6 months or 9 months' time. And I think one of the challenges, and just to draw out a very particular example of, I think, the challenge that organizations are going to face with their grads and apprentices and any kind of hiring really, is I think a lot of organizations are going to be quite cautious in their numbers and err on the side of lower numbers initially in terms of what they go to market looking to hire for, with the hope and expectation that numbers will grow as life becomes a bit more certain and there's more clarity about the shape of organizations, you know, what kind of people they want, all that kind of stuff, volume of demand, you know, customers coming back into the market, all that good stuff. So I think there's an expectation that that more roles will come online over time, you know, and I've been on 2 calls this morning with organizations who are both saying exactly that, is that they're expecting more volumes to, you know, to come for them to hire as we move into the back end of this year and the front end of next calendar year. But then coming back to something that Nick was mentioning earlier on about the huge volumes of applications we're going to get, there's going to be some great talent in there that we're going to have to reject because we just don't have enough, you know, because of the volume of roles that we're looking for. And I think, to my mind, talent pooling has never become more important because there are going to be a whole lot of really great people that you are going to reject because you just simply don't have the numbers. But as and when you need to fill new roles that get signed off, being able to go back to those really great talented people with those opportunities, if you have engaged with them really effectively, to keep them warm and excited about you, you've invested in them in terms of, you know, that their awareness and understanding of your market and the processes they're likely to go through and some of the skills they're going to need for the world of work. It's going to build that really strong emotional connection between them and you. And then when you do go to them with opportunities and say, hey, listen, we weren't successful last time, but you are now. If you've done lots of great stuff with them as part of talent pooling, you're not going to have to spend money going back to market again to attract more people and huge volumes all over again. You can be using that existing talent. So talent pooling is very definitely something we see on the radar for lots of organizations, and obviously because of the volumes, using technology to do that. You know, just having them sitting on an Excel spreadsheet, or they've expressed some interest and it drops them onto a spreadsheet. You've got to engage that pool of talent, but we're definitely seeing companies ramping up what they're doing around talent pooling. I don't know if you wanted to add anything onto that, Nick.
Yeah, I think that talent pooling approach has got so many benefits, but as you're mentioning, in terms of general engagement and relationship building with that potential talent pool, and this can start very early in an individual's life cycle of career decisions. This can be school engagement pieces where they're not sure what to do, and that you can approach them relatively early on in that decision making phase and start building that relationship. So you're basically prepping future talent for the future. It's more cost effective. That issue about not having to keep refilling the hopper with new people and starting that engagement piece from the start again is really important. And we use it very effectively in Merlin with our returner people, in terms of those who have left at the end of a season. How do we keep them engaged over the close period to ensure they don't get poached by other potential competitors? And you can rest assured that in this particular market where there's lots of people, finding those really key individuals, you're going to have companies who are pulling out all the stops with their employer branding, with their guerrilla campaigns out in market as to how they identify talent and how they stand out from the competition. So building that really well engaged talent pool that's more informed about you as a business ends up coming on a journey with you that's positive, I think is really key. I think it's very, very smart to do it that way.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nick. So listen, I think we're moving to wrapping up now. I'm conscious of time. So before Nick and I give any final reflections or thoughts, Hannah, are there any other questions that we need to cover off?
We've just had one more come in. So, and they've asked, how do we align to the school's curriculum and ensure we are not pushed to the bottom of the pile?
I'm going to make an assumption of what you're looking for in that question. So I think, yeah, one of the challenges for any organisation looking to engage with school and college students with what's been going on. Obviously, term has now ended, and we're looking into the autumn term. We did a webinar a couple of weeks ago, and we had some careers leaders on that, and what came through very strongly is right off September in terms of getting in front of schools and colleges, and potentially the front end of October, because they're going to be finding how to make things work effectively, and they're going to be very busy on catch up with a lot of the academic agenda. But they are definitely going to want to engage with employers, and the key to it is bringing to them really good quality interactions that are going to benefit all the students. So if you want to make sure you're not bottom of the pile, but you're top of the pile, you need to be coming to them with content and interactions that are going to benefit all the students that you come into contact with. It's not, the analogy I always talk about is, if you want to go to the bottom of the pile, treat the school like a job centre, expecting them just to promote your roles. You will go right to the bottom of the pile. If you want to be at the top of the pile, create content that can be delivered in 50 minutes, the duration of a lesson, or an hour and 40 for the duration of 2 lessons. Make sure all students will benefit from it, not just those who might want to apply to your apprenticeship. And from a digital perspective, you need to make it really engaging and really interactive. And we haven't got time to talk about it today, but we've got some really great examples of how to make that work effectively, because we've been doing lots of that stuff recently. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Nick.
Align it with the Gatsby benchmarks for me. If you could be proving that you've got encounters with employers and employees, and you've got experience of workplaces within your engagement with schools and colleges, you're ticking a big box that the schools will be very interested in.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks. Any other questions, Hannah?
Perfect. Just a couple more. So this person has asked, hopefully COVID has ended careers fairs. What are the good alternatives to careers fairs?
Nick, do you want to go first? I've got some comments on that. But
well, I think we're seeing that the whole evolution around virtual assessment, virtual careers fairs has got some scope. I think there is a place for some careers fairs when we return to some sort of normality, but I absolutely get the point that it ends up a bit of a bun fight. And if you get the same names appearing at the same places, and I don't know how effective they are sometimes. So the whole sort of social platforms and social engagement and virtual assessments, I think, has got to be part and parcel of a whole raft of three-dimensional engagement practices for me.
Yeah, that's great, Nick. And I think you're right. I think I don't see face-to-face disappearing post-COVID, whether it's careers fairs or, workshops in schools or insight events, whatever it happens to be. I don't see those disappearing, but definitely what I am seeing, and again, I'm just seeing an acceleration, really. I think those careers fairs that bring very relevant and targeted candidates, putting my recruitment hat on, will obviously clearly be highly relevant, but the bun fight ones that are just, employers on massive transmit from a messaging point of view, are increasingly hard to demonstrate ROI going forward. So, this is just a growing trend on, put really simplistically, in all the conversations I have with all the employers over the years, the message really clearly is, I'd much rather be in front of 30 really engaged, interested, relevant individuals than have 1,000 people wander through a careers fair, stealing all my freebies and wandering straight back out again. So it's just that move to targeting, so well-targeted careers fairs definitely got a place to, a role to play, without doubt, whether it was virtual or face-to-face. It's all about the targeting for me. Hannah, I'm conscious of time. Is there anything else before we wrap up?
I think we'll just finish off nicely with a final question, who has asked, any top actionable tips for standing out against the competition when it comes to attraction in what will now be a very noisy digital space?
Nick, I'm going to use that as an opportunity for you and I to wrap up in full by answering that question. So do you want to kick off with your reflections on that?
Yep. So for me, it's about taking a pride in the way you're presenting your opportunities. I've inferred this in the conversation earlier on around not just putting a job description and a list of role and responsibilities out there on the web and hope people will apply, because you'll not necessarily get the right people. They may not be engaging and inspiring as a piece of copy. So spend some time, even if you have to hire somebody to do it, to be a creative writer around your job roles. Pull in the natural talents that you need and really be proud about and authentic. So it has to be representative of what the job is ultimately, but think from a candidate point of view and address those natural talents that you're looking for within that job advert, and treat your advert differently from your description, because there's nothing worse than a list of bullet pointed roles and responsibilities saying this is what you will do. That doesn't help you identify the core of that individual that you're looking to recruit. And definitely don't put in any qualifications and accreditations that you don't need, that are not instrumental in somebody being successful in that job, because you're counting out potential talent that could be fantastic for your roles.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Nick. I think that's such a good point. And I think, again, I'll largely make a kind of wider point rather than very specific activities. And I think for me is, there's going to be a huge amount of candidates on the market, but everyone's still going to be fighting over the best ones. That's not going to have gone away. So, continuing to up your game, both from what Nick said, but also in terms of candidate experience, coming back to that earlier question that was asked. And I think the other piece for me is, and this might sound unbelievably simplistic, but don't expect, I advertise, I get loads of relevant applications, or, candidates go on a journey, as we've talked about today. It's about, they want to find out what's the right role for them. So you need to take them on a journey and enable them to continue their journey of finding out about your organization and what it takes to be successful in that role, and what it's like to work in your organization. And it's a journey you've got to take them on. So you'll probably need multiple touch points. And this is where being in a virtual world plays to that so strongly. You need those multiple touch points to enable the right candidates to apply for the right roles, because that's good for them, because they'll be more suited, and it's good for you because you'll have more of the right kind of people in your process. So that would be the biggie for me, is really think about how you can help candidates make the right decisions to either deselect out
Yeah.
or go right to the top of their priority pile, because it'll be a big pile and you want to be at the top of the priority pile because they'll make bluntly the best efforts with the roles they're most excited about. So I think that for me is the key. So I'm conscious we've overrun a little bit, but I hope that was useful for everybody. Nick, a really big thank you. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts, your perspective, your experience, and also some challenging thinking. And that's very much what we wanted to do on this session today, is hopefully get people just thinking a little bit differently, or from a different perspective, or some different questions to ask internally, either of yourselves or